What's up guys, it's DIDNT here. So wanted to do a bit more of a tutorial video here talking about docking and undocking bookmarks and what that means. I recently started 2 brand new accounts just to start doing some like multi-box mining as well as some SP farming as well. That might be a separate video I might cover later for you guys, but for now, just because I created those new accounts, I realized, obviously you start off in rookie chat. And I noticed tons and tons of people are always asking like, oh, what's an undocking bookmark? How do I make one? Why make one? Things like that. So I kind of wanted to go over like what are bookmarks, even why use bookmarks in the first place, and some of the dynamics that you can run into when it comes to undocking as well as docking into certain stations. So obviously, as you can see in the top left, we're starting with the most famous and probably the most well-traveled station there is in the game, which is DIDNT. So I figured I would start here because this is where probably most newbies are going to be, and this is probably the most important place to have your bookmarks set up. So let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so just to cover over the first thing, so what are bookmarks? So bookmarks are places in space that you can save that you're basically able to travel to very quickly, or just places of interest that you want to save. So the first thing you can do to open up your bookmark page is either to go up to the Neocom up here, go to personal, people and places. What I would suggest from here is to just drag and drop it into your hotbar. This is something that you might be using quite a bit. Another shortcut you can do is just Alt-E. This will also bring up all of your bookmarks. So these are all the bookmarks I have. I even have some different files for different reasons. So as you can see, I have a bookmark for my Amar dock, my Amar hub, my Amar dock. So at pretty much all of the major trading hubs, I have docking and undocking bookmarks for. In order to see your local bookmarks, meaning bookmarks that are here in like the DIDNT solar system, you can press L. It'll let me here. There it goes. So I have 3 set up right now, which is dock, trade hub, undock. Pretty simple, right? For the most part. So these are the bookmarks that are all across the ones you've ever saved that you're pulling up here, and the ones that you have here locally. If you wanted to save a bookmark, so let's go ahead and close this. So let's say you get to a place of interest, so we'll just fly in a random direction here. You can even see my bookmark here for my DIDNT undock that I have saved. So you can actually see bookmarks out in space as you're flying around. So if you wanted to save a bookmark, so let's say you just find a place in space that you want to, or a certain spot, you can even right click an object. Some objects can be saved as a location, so usually it'll default to whatever the name is. But if you wanted to save a place in space specifically, what you can do is just press Alt-E again, click Add Location, and then so we can just put a spot in DIDNT, that's kind of where it stands for now. So right when you click Submit, it's going to save the spot exactly where you are when you click Submit. So when you click it here, where is it? So there it is right there. It says a spot in DIDNT solar system. So it's not when you click Add Location or anything like that. So sometimes what people will do, so as you can see here, we'll go ahead and warp to this area over here. Some people call this a safe spot. I don't want to get too in depth with like how bookmarks work and all that stuff. So this is almost strictly just for docking and undocking, and there's a lot of reasons for it. So so as we're flying in mid-space, so sometimes people will do this mid-warp, not create folder, add a location, click Submit. So usually you can do it while you're in warp a little bit further away. So sometimes people like to place a point in between 2 stations or in between 2 planets to kind of have a safe spot that people just can't find them in. So now you know what bookmarks are, how to add them, how to find them. Let's kind of take a look at why you want to use bookmarks. So in this case, as I was talking about docking and undocking bookmarks, pretty much the sole reason for this, other than maybe saving a little bit of time from slow boating, there is mainly just so you don't get ganked for the most part. So if you are hauling anything relatively expensive, or if you are flying a really low like EHP ship and you're afraid that you might get popped because you are carrying something valuable, it's very, very important that you have your undocks and docking bookmarks set up. So I do want to cover the dynamics of the docking and undocking first before we kind of get into like how you actually make them, just so you guys understand why people use them. I think there's a lot of videos that just say, hey, this is what you do, just do this, okay, now you're fine. I mean, that does help, but I think actually understanding why it's being done and kind of some of the in-game systems in place that kind of either work to your benefit or against you are understood. So let's go ahead and jump into that. All right, so first we're going to cover the dynamics of docking. The first thing is anytime you warp to either a bookmark, a Stargate, or even a station, you're always going to land plus or minus like within 2,500 kilometers of it. As at least pertains to stations, if you land towards the edge of that, so if you land closer to 2,500, you're going to send the docking request, but you're not going to get accepted. Even the distance at where it accepts you, I mean, it's just sometimes it feels like it's random. Sometimes it's 1,000. Sometimes you have to be, damn near on top of the thing before it'll even accept you. So that's one reason why people are actually making these bookmarks. So just to show you, because I have no idea what's going to happen here. Sometimes, so we're going to go ahead and go to the JIDA hub. We're just going to click dock. This is probably what most people do, or if they go to like stations, they go to JIDA 4.4 and they click dock right there. So sometimes if you are lucky, if you just go straight to dock, sometimes you will get accepted immediately. But other times you will stop short, and at that point you will have to use your thrusters to get a bit closer. So as you can see here, we pretty much landed right on top of it. So we actually got pretty lucky that time. So we'll go ahead and take another angle. We'll go from the exact same position. You can actually see the variance yourself. Okay, so let's go ahead and go for attempt number 2. And I think if anything, this kind of helped just proves my point, how sometimes you can click dock once and you instantly dock it and you're like, oh, okay, it's relatively safe. But the variance that I told you about, sometimes you will stop short. And especially if you're in a very, very slow ship that has very weak thrusters, sometimes it can take you a while to get into the station. So as you can see this time, we landed about 600 meters away. And so now we're slow boating. So this whole time that we were moving, we were actually vulnerable. And so that time we landed at 600. So we'll go ahead and try it again. Okay, here we go. And now we're doing attempt number 3 now. And I think this is a decent little sample size just so you guys can see the variance of where you're gonna land if you just straight up just click on the dock portion of the station. So right here we're going in. And as you can see, we are about 2,200 meters away. And so this whole time we're moving right now, we are actually vulnerable to get locked onto, get shot. There's a lot of ships around that are probably just looking at us. And so as you can see, there's roughly about a 2,500 meter variance when it comes to just straight up docking into a station. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at what a docking bookmark looks like. What does it look like when you're actually make a docking bookmark? And after this, I'll go ahead and show you guys how to make a docking bookmark. It's honestly super, super simple. And it's honestly infinitely easier than making an undocking bookmark. So we right clicked, we went to our locations, we click, I just call it dock, so I just know that this is my docking bookmark. And as you can see, we are much, much closer inside the station. And as long as you have that distance up there in the top right that just says 0 meters, anytime you make a bookmark within that kind of area, that is where you want to make your bookmark, and then you can press D to instantly dock. So as you're approaching in, people sometimes just spam click dock. That is usually the safest way to do it. Again, if you want to make a bookmark anywhere around here, so as long as you're close to the station and it shows 0, remember you can just press Alt-E, add a location. You can rename this to say, JIDA dock or just dock, whatever you want to call it. But as long as that distance is set to 0, you can also see it sometimes in the Caldari Navy Assembly title here. This is where you're going to want to set the bookmark to do it. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys what this looks like one more time. So right now I just took the Soboseki gate into JIDA. If you guys don't have it, you should really set your destination to the station itself. So if you know how to set a destination, you click set destination. That's where you kind of get the little icon here up in the top left. And so what we are going to do is just right click our dock bookmark, click warp to. And I know people tell you to never autopilot, but this is the only instance I would say you autopilot. So after you have warp, after you see the warp kind of bar start loading, go ahead and click autopilot. What that means is once you are in range, you are automatically dock. And I only do this because sometimes if you land in the JITA station, it is super laggy. There's a lot of things going on, and sometimes by the time you drop out of warp, you still can't click on anything, and it's really difficult, and there is a time where you are vulnerable. So as you can see, we're warping in, it's a bit laggy, and so some people will click the station and spam click dock up here in the top right, and that's one way you do it. I honestly do it both ways, just in case you manage to not get in, but if for whatever reason it is super laggy or you disconnect, something happens, that autopilot is a kind of a nice second layer of defense, so you're able to dock safely. And so again, if you actually do want to save the location of the station when you undock like this, you just right click it and click save location, put it under the name of the hub, and the autopilot will only work if you actually have the destination set. So if you start going into warp and it says autopilot disabled, no destination, that means you didn't set the station as your as like your destination, and the only way you're going to be able to dock is if you spam click this dock button up here. So again, we'll click on the station. This is where you're going to be able to usually it says save location, probably because I already have the location saved. Yeah, it says save location. You already have it saved, so it already knows. So hope you guys understand the dynamics of the docking. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and throw it down in the comments below, but in the meantime, we'll go ahead and cover the undocking right now. Okay, so now we're going to cover the undocking dynamics, and so there's pretty much 3 things you want to focus on. I mean, always keep an eye out for gankers, but that's pretty much always going to happen regardless, especially in JITA. Some other stations might have gankers depending on how popular it is, but there's pretty much 3 things that I want to kind of keep an eye out for. One is every time you undock, you don't always undock in a perfectly straight line. Sometimes there's kind of like a cone of variance that you'll kind of point in one of the 2 directions. Sometimes there's like a 5 to 10% degree variance of how you undock, which is one reason why a lot of people use undocking bookmarks. The other thing too is in the very top left, sometimes you'll notice when you undock there's like a blue circle in the top left that slowly counts down. That is kind of like your invulnerability timer, so we'll read it off when we undock. And the other thing too is we'll see sometimes some pretty big ships, usually orcas, other ships like that, battleships that are trying to pretty much like block your ship and bump you and kind of disrupt your undocking. So we'll go ahead and do this first, and we'll undock a few times so you can kind of see that cone of variance that I was talking about before. We'll also read off that text here in the top left. The only way you're going to be able to see that kind of like cone that I was talking about is you have to have the tactical overlay activated, so this one right here. So as we zoom in, we're actually heading pretty straight, so that's pretty good. It seems like the first attempt on everything kind of goes against what I say, but that's fine. Sometimes there are ships here that are blocking. Right now there doesn't seem to be any. There are some freighters kind of trying to move out. And here in the top left it says kind of this invulnerability timer. And we'll go ahead and read that off next time, but now you guys can actually see kind of that variance here. Okay, here we go again. And so this time you can see we're actually going like way to the bottom right this time that we're undocking. Up here in the top left, it says ship is invulnerable. Invulnerability period will end early if a target is locked, a module is activated, or a ship is moved. So this pretty much stays, but the second we move our ship, you see it actually goes away, and we'll even play around with that on the next couple undocks. So you can see that first time around we were going way to the bottom right with a little bit of variance. All right, and here is our third undock, as we'll see here. Go ahead and zoom in, and so now this time we're going to the way bottom left, so that variance is pretty significant, and it does seem to cover pretty much a big circle. So you can see that invulnerability timer's up, but the second we activate this hardener, this goes away. So we actually just took off like the last 6 seconds or so of our invulnerability timer. So basically that timer exists just so to protect people when they undock. You can't get instantly shot or anything like that. You do have about 10 seconds of invulnerability, which allows you to phase through ships, and you can't be locked. Nothing can really happen to you. But the second that goes away, or you activate a module, or you lock another ship, you do become vulnerable. And so I'll go ahead and first show you what it looks like if you're trying to, let's say, warp to a gate without the undock and then with the undock. Okay, so I have my destination sent to perimeter, which is pretty much a complete 180 in the opposite direction of where we're heading. So as you can see, we're undocking. Now we're going to the high top right. So let's go ahead and warp to the perimeter gate. And so we're actually flipping around. So this whole time, as this bar is charging, we are vulnerable. That the timer on the top left is gone. That's bar is charging. Anybody can lock us and shoot us right now. So if you are carrying valuables, especially if you're in a hauler, there will be people that will lock onto your ship and scan you if you have anything expensive. So as you can see, we were vulnerable for probably about 5 to 8 seconds. I didn't really count, but that is exactly something that we want to eliminate. Okay, so now this time we're going to try it with the Undock bookmark. So the whole point is to basically have no time between that timer. So we go to locations. You do have to be kind of quick with this because you only get 10 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and click on the Undock. And so as you can see here, when that went away, we immediately undocked it. Now we're pretty far away from anything dangerous. So now there's no ships, at least within 200 kilometers of us, that could possibly shoot us down. And then from here, now we jump through the gate. So basically you just want to get away from the gate. This is exactly where, so not the gate, the station. This is where all the gankers are. This is where all the people are trying to loot your ship and kill you. You just need to get away as far as you can as possible. And then from here, we can go ahead and jump through the perimeter gate. At this point, I'll go ahead and show you how to make the Undock bookmark. Okay, so there are two main ways to make an Undock bookmark. I'll go ahead and show them both here real quick. Really the only rule with the Undock bookmark, or I should say two, one is that it has to be within that cone of influence. You want to have it in the middle as possible. So the first way, and this is actually what I did when I very first started, was I just zoomed in, and sometimes if you're really lucky, you can see these little like reinforced like mobile depots and stuff that are really far out. And so I would usually just click on that and click warp to. And usually I just pick the one that seemed to be in the most straight line, and it has to be at least 150 kilometers out. If it's not, then you just can't warp to it. That's kind of the rules of the game. And from here, you can then make a bookmark. I mean, you're pretty far out. Usually these mobile depots don't last very long. And then at this part, again, you just close or click Alt-E. You make your bookmark, and then this is a pretty consistent point that you can make it. But there's a more manual way that is more consistent, especially if there aren't mobile depots. So let's say like No Dixie, Amar. Sometimes these things aren't always out here to help you out. Okay, so I'm going to show you the second way, which is pretty much the manual way. You can either do this in a Corvette or any ship that you like. Typically you want to use a ship that is a bit faster so you can kind of get it done. So again, we have to have our tactical camera up, or like our overlay. So we have our variants out here. Try and pick a spot in the middle. So you want to double click in space in order to line up. And you can go ahead and click on your micro warp drive, your afterburner, whatever it is you have. And this is how most people make their undock right now. So you want to try and make it as straight as possible. I think a lot of people, when they undock, they just turn on the afterburner and it goes in a random direction, and they're like, well, why isn't my undock working? No, you have to pick a spot that is relatively straight. And so what you want to do is, I mean, you can go out here as far as you want. Definitely play with this. Sometimes you're not always as straight as you think you are when you are making your undocking bookmarks. Sometimes you can get bumped like that, and you essentially need to start over, to be honest, because now that kind of threw us off, and now we're not straight for the most part. And so that's kind of where you want to fix this as well. And so a lot of things can happen when you are trying to make your undock bookmark. The manual way is the most tedious, but sometimes it's your only option if you don't have these mobile depots sometimes out here to help you out. And of course, you want to keep testing your undock bookmark. Try it with different ships that are large or small, things like that. I did notice that ships with a lower align time do tend to be able to hit that bookmark a bit easier, but if you are flying a really big ship, like a battleship or like an Orca, things like that, it can be really difficult. So sorry for the fit. I honestly just threw this together one day. But so this ship has a decent align time, but sometimes ships that have a really high align time, it can be more difficult for them to instantly undock, but it should be fine as long as it's centered, and it should be instant. So okay, so I flew for a while. I managed to dodge those battleships that are trying to block me, but I found a reasonably straight line of about 400 kilometers out. That's probably the minimum I would recommend you guys to do as well. If you go exactly to like 150 or like 151, Sometimes you'll actually travel too far out and you won't be able to warp to your spot. So, and you want to be far enough away that sometimes there are, very rarely, but sometimes there are gankers that kind of hang around where the undock bookmarks are and just kind of wait for you to stop. So again, we're going to click Alt-E here. We're just going to add a location. I'll just name it a spot in Jita for now, and we'll go ahead and test to see if that worked. Okay, let's go ahead and see if that freshly made undock bookmark works. I feel like it should, but you never know. So we're going to go ahead and test it right now. And this is one other thing I did want to mention here, but we'll go ahead and try and test the bookmark. So if you are clicking the station, sometimes it won't show your bookmarks. So you have to actually click out in space in order to see it. And so we'll go ahead and click our spot in Jita. So that tiny bit of time, honestly, that isn't a huge deal. There could be a way I could probably make the undock a bit better, but again, that's kind of the whole variance thing. And as you can see, even the variance allows here. So here's our bookmark here. We landed 2,200 meters away from it. So even where your undock is, there is a bit of variance, but it's not that big of a deal with the undock for the most part. But it seems to work reasonably well. If you feel like that is very consistent with some of the bigger ships, sometimes that bar won't be as close and it will take you a few seconds to undock. That's something we don't want. We want to make sure that you're not lockable, scannable, gankable, anything like that when you are doing this. All right, we're almost done here. We're going to go ahead and put it all together in a second here, but there is one safety measure I do want to say while you are undocking. So if you do undock, we're going to use the Orca here. Again, my favorite ship in the game. If you do undock, and sometimes this happens to me where your screen is just dark the entire time, and sometimes by the time you exit out, either your timer is almost done or it's pretty much done. If that is the case, you do want to dock immediately. Or if you do click your warp to undock bookmark, but the second you do that, your invulnerability timer goes away, which makes you collidable with other ships. And sometimes if you do that while inside of another like battleship or like something bigger, basically of equivalent size or bigger than you, it will knock you off your trajectory, and then you'll notice your warp bar actually go down, meaning like you're not aligned. And at that point too, you want to stop your ship and realign. So I'll go ahead and show you here what that looks like here with the Orca and what you can do. Because if you try to undock and you don't do it immediately, you need to stop your ship, just redock and do it again. So in this case, what you want to do, so let's say we try to click our warp button and we run in, you can't really see it right now, it hasn't like loaded in. But let's say we try to click and go to our our undock bookmarks, and the second we tried it, we start colliding into this Orca. And we just can't get to our bookmark. So like, let's say right now we try to go to our undock and see how it's kind of thrown us off and we're like bumping into other ships. So you actually want to hold control space to stop your ship, click the station and click dock. Or you can click this minus button to stop the ship, because once you're in warp mode, or once you started initiating warp, you can't interact with anything else. So you actually have to stop your ship and redock. Because if you click initiate warp and you're bouncing off of other ships and that bar is still there, people can lock onto you. So what we want to do is that if you are bumping into other ships, either just click this minus button, click the station and click dock, or you can go control space, click the station and dock again, because we just want to retry the attempt and not get stuck. Kind of like this porpoise right here. He's just bouncing around. He's trying to get to the other spot. He's doing 360s and he's just getting stuck on other people. And at that point, even this freighter here is doing the same thing. At this point, you just want to just stop and just redock instead of just bumping into everything at this point.
Docking permission requested.
Okay, so this time we're going to do it all together. I know it seems like I'm beating a dead horse here, but I want to make sure you guys get it and understand it, especially for some of you new bros out there. Now that you guys understand the dynamics, why to make bookmarks, we'll go ahead and put it all together so you know what it looks like. So we'll go ahead and go to the undock. So we're just going to click a point in space, not on the station. Locations, we'll try the spot that we just tried. We'll go to warp to 0. So we instantly warp. So the bar is gone. It just says warp drive activated. So we're heading to our spot out here in space that we made not too long ago. And so we'll go ahead and I'm not going to jump through the gate. Let me click this. Or warp to. I'm not going to jump through the gate. I'm just going to warp to it. So that way we can actually practice the docking part. So And I hope all this stuff is making sense to you guys, like why the bookmarks and all that stuff. So if you don't understand how to make bookmarks, how to make undock ones, dock ones, go ahead and throw it down in the comments below. I mean, if I don't help you, there's a lot of really knowledgeable people that will help you down in the comments as well. But this is definitely just more of a tutorial video. We already have the station saved as a bookmark. So what we're going to do is right click. If you already don't have it saved as your destination, it should. So again, so locations. So there's the trade hub. We want to do set destination. So this will allow us to actually autopilot to it. So now we're going to go ahead and go to our dock, go to warp to 0, and activate my macro warp drive so it doesn't take a full minute. So once the warp drive is active, activate your autopilot. And again, this is just kind of a safety net just in case once you land there, it gets super laggy. Sometimes you disconnect. I mean, a lot of things can happen while you're trying to dock up. So if something like that happens and you're just not able to click on the station and click dock, you should be able to instantly undock when that happens. So as we're flying in, should only be a few more seconds now as we're getting closer. So now we're going to warp pretty much right on top of the station instead of on the edge of it, and then we're going to have to slowly use our thrusters to get forward. And as we actually fly up too, I'll try and point out, especially in JITA, there are edges of the station where people typically land, and there are gankers there for the most part, if I can kind of point them out. So as you can kind of see over there, there's a lot of ships waiting for people. So I actually won't click the dock. So you can actually click the station and click this dock button, because once that warp drive active text goes away, you can dock. But if I just leave it, because we autopiloted, we pretty much, the second that goes away, we're able to dock. But I do believe you can dock a tiny bit faster if you click that. But again, I just want to show you guys what it looks like with the autopilot on as you're trying to warp to your station. So again, if you guys have any questions, comments, if this was helpful in any way, go ahead and throw them down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I wish you guys a good one.